I'm Meghan
Hi.
Leigh.
And I'm Nicole Danielle.
And this is Romance on the Rocks, where two bookish biddies imbibe and share what they've been reading. I don't know if we've got anything good to share this week, though.
Oh my
How are
gosh.
you
So
feeling,
we're continuing our Scottish-Irish theme.
Nicole?
And I will tell you straight up, I have trigger warnings galore for mine. Tons. Let me list all my trigger warnings. Sexual assault, sexual violence, sodomy, sadism, aggravated sexual battery, and sexual abuse.
Woof.
So those are the trigger warnings I have. Megan, any trigger warnings for your book?
None. Not a single one. Not a single trigger warning at all.
Okay.
Unless you just want to think that me being annoyed is a trigger. So
that can be
it.
triggering. What are you drinking this evening, my love?
Well, I am starting with just a Meghan special, which is anything in a mason jar. This is vodka and kombucha because, you offset the good with the bad. But when we get to my book, I got the world's cutest little bottle of champagne for anybody.
Oh, look at that. It's adorable.
In listener land. This is teeny tiny. This is like 8 inches tall, 8 inches in girthy, just the way we like it. And I'm going to wait to pop the top on this until I'm talking about my book.
Oh,
but it was chilled. And
Oh.
I told the nice gentleman at my liquor store that I will probably let the rest of it go flat. So he led me to the tiny bottles.
The very wise of the man.
Yeah.
I am drinking a Leith Lemon Garden.
Leith? Lemon? How do you spell Leith?
Leith. It is a part of Edinburgh. It is a lovely little concoction, and I have my little dehydrated lemon slice and some mint. It has gin. Lovely. I didn't realize that Scottish people like their gin so much, but apparently they do.
Yeah, actually, we'll go back to that.
I was supposed to put elderflower liqueur in, but mine went bad, and because it's been sitting there for literally years, I moved it all the way from Wisconsin to North Carolina. It didn't go well. It had floaties.
It's
so
aged.
I dumped it, but I happen to have some elderflower tonic in my fridge. And I'm like, oh, a little bubbly. That will be delightful. And then some lemon juice, and I slapped up some mint, and so there we go.
That sounds really good. Gin was actually the original old-fashioned. Like, if you go back in history, back in Europe, the alcohol was so terrible, but they were trying to get the quinine in them from the gin to try and cure all their ills, but it tasted so awful, they had to keep mixing it with stuff. So
Gotcha.
The original old-fashioned was actually a gin old-fashioned, and the gin was pretty popular because it was actually for health purposes. So you're being very healthy right now.
With my quinine.
Exactly.
From my tonic. Yes. It's lovely. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it at first, but I'm halfway through and it's quickly growing on me. Shall we just dive right into the books, Megan?
Let's do it. What do you got?
I have The Border Lord's Bride by Bertrice Small. The publication date is 2007. Let's just talk about Madame Small for a minute. She is a New York Times bestselling writer of historical and erotic romance novels. She authored over 50 novels in those genres, as well as the fantasy/romantasy category. She has received numerous awards during her career, and her Skye O'Malley books, which are a couple of different series, were perhaps her most popular. These books are actually being turned into a TV series for Apple TV. This was announced last year, about springtime-ish, about the same time last year. But Megan, I cannot find any information on when a release date for this show would be, but it was announced in the works last year.
Okay.
Small did pass away in 2017 at the age of 77, and her son Tom currently handles her estate and carrying on the legacy of her literary works. So in addition to my Wikipedia author research, I also found a little blog article by Introvert Reader on sweetsavageflame.com that I feel really sums up Small's writing style, at least as far as I can tell, based on the book I just read for the podcast. Quote, Small's usual romps where the heroine is captured by some salacious sultan/whore master/caliph and enslaved into his harem. And introvert reader also comments on Small's usual sexcapades, where the heroine and hero cavort with every stap and orifice in plain sight. So that pretty much tells you what we're getting into here, Megan.
Oh boy. I've got just to let the listeners, who are probably readers, let the listeners know, I have 2 Bertrice Small books in my queue and almost was going to read one for this episode. I ended up switching at the last minute. So I'm going to find out maybe what I'm in for at some point in time.
I'm going to send you the article that I just pulled those quotes from, because the very ending of the article, it's a doozy, Megan.
We imagine.
So, The Border Lord's Bride. As I said, historical romance, lots of triggering items. There's an age gap romance. The hero is more than twice the heroine's age. I'm giving it a habanero ranking on our spicy Scoville.
Ooh,
but
so
if we
she's
had
up there.
ghost pepper on our scale, which is higher on the chart, I would probably give it that, but it fell just short of the Carolina Reaper ranking. And I'm definitely accompanying this one with pepper spray.
Okay.
And if there's a complete opposite to Debbie Mancumber, I would say it's Bertrice Small. I honestly, Megan, I was not prepared for this book. And I'm saying that after having just read Wild Werewolf Smut. And I almost could not finish this Bertrice Small book because it was so disturbing.
Oh, man.
Okay, main characters. Duncan Armstrong, a laird and border lord, friend of King James with dark hair and blue eyes in his mid to late 30s. I found Duncan to be an ethical, moral man and fairly loving husband, but in terms of a hero, a little lackluster and frankly pretty useless when he was needed most. MacArthur, a Scottish Highland beauty raised by her grandfather. She has red hair and blue eyes. She's spirited, smart, and strong, but also elegant and polite and knows when to be reserved in certain situations. I actually liked her character a lot. But the story begins when she's 16.
All right. She's
engaged to her cousin, Donald McNabb, who her grandfather has named as his heir. This arrangement is considered favorable for Ellen and their clan, and the wedding is set for about a year from then. However, some other blood relatives don't like this plan, and they want one of their family members, Baljer MacArthur. What a name, Baljer. I even looked up the pronunciation. I was like, wow.
How's it spelled?
Balgair.
Huh. All right.
Yeah. So he wants to marry her so that he can claim the lands and the inheritance. Ellen and her grandfather refuse to alter their plans to follow what the MacArthurs want, and so Baljer is going to bride nap her and force her into marriage with him. But Grandpa ain't no fool, and he suspects that will happen, so he sends Ellen to live at court under King James's watchful eye until the time he sends for her when he's either nearing death or it's time to marry McDonald. Or not McDonald. Marry Donald. Donald McNabb
sounds like a football player for some sort of NFL team.
Right.
Didn't we had Donald Driver, and who was our McNabb? Didn't we have both on the Packers?
I don't remember, but there was a McNabb in Harry Potter too. So.
Yeah. All right, man. Keep going.
Ellen spends a year at court becoming friends with the king. They play chess together, and she's considered one of his favorites at court, but in a non-sexual way, very innocent. She eventually receives word that she needs to return home, so the king entrusts her with his friend Duncan and his men, and he escort Ellen to her island home. However, they discover upon arrival that Baljer has just murdered both her granddad and Donald. Like, they're literally sitting dead bodies in the middle of the dining room. And he used trickery to force her grandfather into signing a new will, naming him as the heir and instructing that Ellen must marry him. I mean, imagine rolling in home and, like, all your loved ones are murdered.
This guy sounds like a catch.
Yeah, that's one way to win a bride. Ellen demands that she be allowed the proper mourning time of 1 year, and she says she will only marry Baljer if King James says she must once Duncan goes back and reports what has happened. Balger says that he's going to give her 1 month before she must marry him and swears to Duncan and Bertrice that he won't force her to marry before the month is over. And do we think we can trust this guy, Meghan?
I'm sorry. Did they leave her with this guy?
Yeah. With no protection. No protection.
Sounds like a great idea. He just murdered her loved ones. Let's just leave her with him.
Yeah, I was floored. So Duncan leaves her there to her own defenses, no protection, not even like a guard or a chaperone or anything. And
we can trust this guy.
Yeah, not shockingly at all, Balger goes to Ellen that very night after she buries her kin and attempts to rape her. Mm-hmm. She, very smartly, however, though, keeps a small knife with her at all times, per how Grandpa taught her, and stabs the shit out of this guy and leaves him for dead. Go, Ellen.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, I was like, kick ass, lady, kick ass. She immediately chases after Duncan so that he can take her back to King James, and the king can then decide what to do from there. There's a lot of time that goes by. It's almost another year-ish, and Ellen during this time is shuffled around court and under Duncan's family care. But eventually, the king decides that Ellen's estate and lands are forfeit and that the MacArthurs and McNabs are going to go ahead and battle it out. As to who will get them, who knows, which I just think is bullshit, but whatever.
Wow. So he doesn't seem like he's being a very good friend in this one.
That's what I'm saying.
How old is she by this time? I feel like she's got to be like 19,
Yeah,
20?
she's 19, almost just 20, like somewhere in that zone. But still fairly young.
Young, but not underage. We've had time to get to know her. Okay.
And by those times, an old maid practically.
Whatever.
I know. I'm thinking of the emotional maturity of most 19 and 20-year-olds I know. I will say Ellen's ahead of her time, but yeah. So the king does provide her with a small dowry for her trouble of losing her lands and estate and inheritance.
And then family.
Yeah. And then commands that she and Duncan get married.
Why?
It made sense in the book, I guess, because he saw that their friendship had grown over time, and he felt like Duncan needed to tie the knot because he's getting too old, and who else would take a girl with no land? Like, I don't know.
But she had land.
I know.
Okay, I'm sorry. That does not make sense. She doesn't have land because you took it away from her by saying that it didn't really matter. And now you're like, oh, but now that she doesn't have land, maybe she just marry this other guy. What? I don't like it.
I didn't care for it either, but here we are.
All right.
So she's barely almost 20 at this time. And again, Duncan is twice her age. Whatever. They're not in love with each other, but I will say that they have developed a true and real friendship and that their relationship and marriage seem promising. They feel like we're amicable. We can grow love, It seems plausible. So they get married and they have sex. And Meghan, when I say they have sex, I mean a lot of sex, like copious and gratuitous amounts of sex. At every turn, sex. And I like my books a little spicier. But even I was getting to the point of this is too much sex.
She's probably getting chafed.
And Meghan, this is totally one of those books where she's a virgin with no sexual experience, but somehow manages to orgasm twice the first time she has sex with no foreplay. And then, of course...
And like a 12-inch dong made of sandpaper. And it just went in easy. She rode that and was like, this is great.
And then, of course, she orgasms every time that she has sex with Duncan.
Yeah, he's magic. He's got a magic dong.
I will say they did talk about that the first time was painful, but that was quickly forgotten. And of course she came twice, which I was just like, that's believable. Yeah, I knew you'd appreciate that.
I mean, appreciate's not quite the right word.
Right. So as a border lord, Duncan has some enemies, particularly English opposing border lords. There's a lot of back and forth of attacking each other's land, stealing each other's sheep, raping and pillaging. The huge.
Raping and pillaging sheep.
I mean, maybe.
The huge.
One of these men eventually kidnaps Ellen as revenge against Duncan. And this is where the book went completely south for me, and I almost couldn't finish reading it. At first, Ellen spends a month in the dungeon, largely ignored. Then she's brought to a tower where things get absolutely nasty. The asshole who kidnapped her is a sadist, he's a serial rapist, and he's a murderer. He drugs her, he sexually assaults her, and his assaults include aggravated sexual battery, sexual violence, and sexual abuse that I can't even get into because it was just too much for me. I was struggling.
A little bit like some of what I was dealing with my last book.
Yeah, with Karen Robards.
Oh, yeah, Karen Robards, Dark of the Moon. Yeah, there was. Yours sounds a lot more involved. Mine definitely involved some of that sadism and whatnot from the kidnapping and the forcefulness. But, yep, nope.
Ellen keeps waiting for Duncan to come rescue her, but months, and I mean months, plural, go by, and he never shows up. So she has to make a decision as to whether she's going to try to escape, and there are very limited opportunities for her to do so, or if she's going to just throw herself from the castle window and kill herself, which I would have probably gone for that option myself, or if she's just going to succumb to her kidnapper's nefarious plans. Take that however you want to.
100% no.
Right. This is where Ellen, perhaps to me, shows some of her greatest cunning and intelligence as she is able to escape and, with the help of some monks and other border lords, makes her way slowly back to Duncan.
Why?
Because, yeah. That's kind of where I was at, especially, oh, God, I'm not even going to get into it because there's just too much to talk about. But there are additional challenges that ensue, of course. But honestly, by this point of the book, I was so disgruntled. And the rest of it makes me even angrier and more frustrated that I'm just, like I said, I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to give my final notes on this book. I'll start with things I enjoyed about the book.
Okay.
I liked several of the female characters. Ellen, her sister-in-law, Adair, and then her other sister-in-law, Duncan's sister, who is a nun, and I can't think of her name right now, but she was a very cool character. Not your typical nun, very tongue-in-cheek, sassy, and I loved her. They know each other for almost a year before they're wed and begin their sexual relationship, and I felt like that was good. They didn't just fall in love after 1 week. There was a natural progression and a realistic progression of their feelings for each other. And at one point, Ellen's like, I don't know if I love you because I've never been in love and I'm not sure what that feels like. But I think if I am going to fall in love, it will definitely be with you and over the course of our marriage. I felt like, okay, that's probably realistic for those times. Like, you didn't know if you were going to love who you were forced to marry. So I could tell as well that Bertrice is a huge history lover and well-researched with all the knowledge available at the time that she wrote the book. There were lots of history elements, especially regarding King James and historically accurate foods for the time period, greatly interwoven into the story. However, they were greatly interwoven into the story. Constant, lengthy, repetitive historical references regarding King James, and it frankly bogged down the book. And many stories regarding the king and the royal family were repeated ad nauseum and could have been an entirely separate book. It didn't even need to be in this book. Instead of spending paragraphs and pages repeating the same information over and over again, Bertrice Small could have just summarized them or just left them out and not repeated them repeatedly. There was the same problem when Ellen was explaining how she escaped the clutches of the kidnapper. Paragraphs and pages spent with her retelling literally the same story over and over, just to different people. I'm like, we get it. We fucking get it. Like, it's just not necessary. And in a similar but disturbing vein, her kidnapper's sadistic fantasies about what he will do when he recaptures Ellen are repeated multiple times with sodomy and sexual battery. I found it completely disturbing and unnecessary and frankly upsetting. Small could have just said something like he fantasized about what he would do when he found her and he would torture her and left it at that. Nope. She spends several paragraphs and pages going into depth about his constant sick shit that he's envisioning and keeps revisiting it. It just didn't seem necessary to me. We get it. He's a bad guy. Like, I don't need the gross details, you know? I was also upset by Duncan's lack of empathy and concern for Ellen's actual mental and physical well-being when she returns to him. At no point did he be like, hey, are you okay? He didn't ask.
I'm sorry, he did not come to find her.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting any empathy out of him. Did we find out why he didn't come to find her? Is that ever revealed?
Yes. He didn't make any real or concerted efforts to find her. He spent about 2 weeks riding up and down the borderlands. And then he was like, oh, I guess I can't find her and I don't know where she went. But my issue is you're a border lord with tons of resources. You have connections and resources with other border lords. You have connections and resources with the king who favors you and your wife. At no point you couldn't send a couple of your guys to go get some information or details or go to the king and be like, hey, one of your favorite subjects was kidnapped. What help can you provide us? No, motherfucker spent 2 weeks looking and then was like, nah, I guess I'm not going to find her.
Here's the thing. If he's not going to keep looking for her, I definitely don't feel as though he's going to give any sort of empathy once she's back.
The fact that he wasn't even like, are you hurt? Are you okay? No. You know what his entire focus was on? Whether or not there was penile penetration by her assaulter. Only the penis. He didn't care if she'd been assaulted with other things. Just that.
Because that would have ruined her?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, Duncan, maybe go find yourself another biatch.
Yeah. I mean, the wenches are easy to come by, you know?
Clearly. I mean, he wasn't looking for this one so hard, so I'm sure he found something else in the meantime.
I will tell you, though, Megan, I had a conversation with some of the men of the cul-de-sac here. And I was like, how much time would you spend looking for your wife? I didn't really love the answers I got. And these are men who love their wives. But they all kind of had the same attitude. So I think the male mentality, just in general, I'm sure there are exceptions, but the male mentality is like, 2 weeks to a month? Well, if I can't find you, I can't find you. It's medieval times. Shit out of luck. I got a kid to watch, a border to maintain. Like, I was floored. But I was like, I guess as women we're taught, oh, he will look for you until the ends of the earth. But I was like, dude, I'd at least spend 6 months to a year looking for your ass.
We're also taught to not give up and to try really hard. And so you and I, our personalities are, if I haven't succeeded yet, then I haven't tried hard enough.
Right.
And if I give up now, I am going to kick myself forever for not continuing. I wonder if the mindset is just, from their perspective, I tried for 2 weeks and I tried real hard. So if it didn't happen, then it wasn't going to happen at all because clearly I tried so hard. Like it's like a different way of looking at it. It's like I'm putting in all the effort, and since I didn't get the reward, then whereas you and I are like, I didn't get the reward yet, so I need to try harder. It's almost like an opposite.
I somewhat get the logic of you're a lord, you have a little fiefdom or whatever that you're in charge of. You've got people that rely on you that you have to take care of, whatever. But my issue truly is you haven't been told that she's dead. Like, no one sent a dead body back to you as part of the revenge or whatever. You know who kidnapped her. Fucking figure it out, man. Like,
and it doesn't have to be you. You
send some dudes.
Yeah, you're a lord for a reason. Send some guys. Have them like rub elbows in local taverns and do some sneaky stuff to figure it out.
That's what I'm saying. And he's well connected to the other border lords all across the border. They're all very cooperative and working together. I'm like, you couldn't send some fielders out and really stress to your fellow border lords that, hey, my wife is still missing. Like, I couldn't get it. I just couldn't.
Can I just ask, did they end in some sort of happily ever after where it seemed like somehow this was all great?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Sure.
But there were even caveats with that. So.
Yeah. I just feel like at some point in time, women, ladies, you deserve more.
I definitely felt that Ellen deserved more. I definitely felt that Ellen got the short end of the stick with a husband that allegedly fell in love with her and loved her truly and whatever. And she's being this great, fabulous wife more than he could have ever hoped or dreamed for. And then he spends 2 weeks trying to find her and he's like, meh. Oh, well.
And the whole while, she's experiencing just torture. And then she comes back to, well, but what kind of torture? Is it torture that I'm going to find acceptable and, like, allow you back in the house?
Right. And was it a human penis? Yeah.
Yeesh. Okay.
So, moving on.
Please.
Food. We've been talking about foods for books.
I was going to ask, because you mentioned that there was a lot of appropriate food.
There were tons and tons of foods. I didn't sit there and try to write it all down because it was a lot. And then there was a lot of ale and wine. I have some fun body part references for you.
Ooh, what do you got?
Remember in my last book, A Scot is Not Enough, he referred to her breasts as crumpets.
Yes. Yes.
In this book, Duncan really loves to refer to his wife Ellen's boobs as apples repeatedly. Apple boobs.
Nice and ripe. Shine them up. Give them your teacher.
I was just trying to think of apples, and I was like, are we talking like a Red Delicious, which is kind of more elongated and nubby on the bottom, or are we talking like a Macintosh apple, which is a little rounder and smaller? Like
Granny Smiths, they're just hanging there.
Having worked in an apple orchard in my youth, I was like, I'm trying to envision apple boobs, and my mind is going a mile a minute. Like, yeah,
just means he wants to pick them.
Yeah. Also, turgid cock was repeatedly used.
Turgid is such a great word. It's a funny word. I love it.
And then, I'm on a quest to find the proper name for meow. Still not there, but this was a new one for me. Nether lips.
Oh, that's fun. Nether lips. That sounds like an insult. What you doing over there, nether lips?
It made me giggle. I was like, wait, what?
I love it.
Yeah.
So
That's all I got.
In general, I'm hearing that you do not highly recommend this book.
Nope.
Well, cool. Shall we talk about mine then?
Yes, let's move forward and talk about yours.
Which I also don't highly recommend. So I read Lynn Curlin's All for You. Guys, okay. This was published in 2012, and our main gal in this is Peaches Alexander.
Oh my God, that's right. You told me her name, and I was like, what?
Yes. Yeah, it is her given name. Nowhere in here does it say that's a nickname, that it's like a fun little thing that like somebody... No, her given name is Peaches.
So on her birth certificate, it says Peaches.
Yep. Peaches Alexander. When we first meet her, she is working as a life coach. She is visiting her twin sister, Tess, in England. She had been living in California, now in England, visiting Tess. Tess has recently gotten married. I see a look of questioning on your face.
Okay, she's a twin, but her twin got a decent normal name of Tess, and then she gets Peaches?
Right, girl. Right.
Okay, carry on.
Okay. So anyway, Tess recently got married. Tess and her husband have bought this kind of like older castle estate and have been renovating it in order to rent it out for medieval reenactments and retreats. They've got this entire section full of like costumes and stuff. So when people come, they can like pick things out and go do these retreats. So it sounds like a lot of fun, actually. However, in like the very first chapter, you can just see that her world is starting to spiral because all of her clients are suddenly just leaving her. She's getting all of these messages where people are just dumping her as their life coach. And she's like, if I had 25, clients, I now have one.
Oof. Okay.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
You do come to find out it's because her sister, Tess, answered her phone and made some remarks to like her best client that were not appropriate. It's kind of a funny little takedown. But because of this, her best client basically told everybody else, dump her. So now she's kind of jobless and in England. And at her sister's insistence, Peaches decides to stay in England for a bit to think about what she really wants to do next. The quote that I really liked in the beginning to describe her was, She liked being in control of her life, having her ducks in a row. Her shoes were organized by color, her spices waiting obediently in the cabinet, secure in their alphabetical sorting. I was like, I feel like Nicole could appreciate that, like the colorful, like, sorting and the alphabetical sorting.
Hell yeah. That's speaking my language.
Yep. And then after that is when I decided I didn't relate to her anymore, because then she was a vegetarian who doesn't drink and likes to go jogging. And I'm like, nah, you lost me.
No, thanks.
Yeah. So anyway, she's staying in England to see what it is she really wants. And she has this epiphany. She's like, I know what it is. I know what it is I want to do next. And I'm waiting for it to be, I want to travel, or I've decided to stay and open a bed and breakfast, or, you know, I'm going to stay here with my sister. No, what she decides that she wants to do is, her younger sister got married to a lord. Her twin sister got married, now has a castle. She wants a fairy tale too. That's what she really wants.
Because you can totally make that happen on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not like I lost my job, let me think about how I want to move forward in my life. It's I lost my job. You know what I want? I want to fall in love.
Not how am I going to pay the bills? Maybe I should try this other career path with my other skills and techniques. And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My siblings found Prince Charming. I want one too. It was a very like middle school or high school way of like thinking. And that's kind of how I felt about most of this book is it felt kind of underdeveloped from an emotional standpoint, maybe, or I don't know. We then meet her love interest. We meet Stephen de Piaget. He's a local university professor. He teaches history with a focus on the Middle Ages. Additionally, he holds many titles: Duke, Viscount, Lord. Like, it's too much to get into. He is set to inherit even more titles after the death of his father, at which point he will then be the Earl of Artane, which in the book is a large, stately castle home in England. Stephen works closely with Peach's sister, Tess, who is also a professor at the university, and he spends his free time driving to Scotland to learn swordsmanship, fighting, and survival lessons from a man named Ian MacLeod. So from all of that, possible high points, I quickly got annoyed. Why did I get annoyed? You may ask.
I do ask. Meghan, why did you get annoyed?
Nicole, this book on the front just says New York Times bestselling author of One Magic Moment, followed by a quote, clearly one of romance's finest writers. Okay, then first time in print. I go to the spine, and all it does is give the title and her name. I go to the back. It just talks us through kind of what I was just telling you. You go to the front of the book, and it's like praise for the other novels that she's written, and it's just pages and pages of praise. Nowhere on this book or in this book does it say, hey, you're picking up the 13th book in a series. The 13th book. Do you know how long it took me to realize this was part of a series? I was so confused. Yeah, it's a 13th book in the de Piaget series, and it intermixes with her MacLeod series. It's like two series that meet in the middle. And because of this, there is no real explanation as to why ghosts appear and nobody seems fazed. The fact that time travel and time gates are like well known and an unremarkable thing, like nobody's like, what the fuck? It's just, yeah, that's a thing and it exists. You find out that Peach's and Tessa's younger sister, Pippa, is literally living in the Middle Ages because in a previous book, she married some guy from the Middle Ages, also a de Piaget. I can't keep any of the random characters straight because they all have the same freaking last names. It's either a de Piaget or a MacLeod, depending, and they're all from different centuries. So you're like, wait, who and why and who married whom?
So
Because
there's like
she's from-
inbreeding, but because there's enough time travel, it's not? I'm
Yes.
confused.
Yes. When you go through and you know where the clues were? On the very last pages. Okay, so this book is 303 pages long. On page 304, there's a family tree and breakdown. But you can't even still really follow it because it doesn't make sense, because the girls from like our time period, 2 of them married people from the Middle Ages and 1 of them married a person from now. And these people just keep popping up randomly, where you're like, when I said he was going to Scotland to learn sword fighting from Ian MacLeod's from the Middle Ages. He just happens to be living here now. It was so confusing and none of it was really explained. Okay. So maybe had I started from the beginning and known who these characters were, it would have made more sense. You know, when you read something where it's initially confusing and then suddenly you have the aha moment, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Initially, I thought that's what was happening. Like, oh, this is all going to be explained soon and it'll be like why we're seeing ghosts and whatever. No, it was never really explained. I just suddenly had to be like, wait, it's
So you would have had to have read 12 other books to get the full gist of this one book?
Yes.
No, thank you.
Yes. So anyway, the main premise of this book is that Stephen has been crushing on Peaches for a while. I think one of the previous books, you might have even gotten a background into the 2 of them interacting. I don't know. To quote you from last episode, I think that might have happened because they seem to come into it with an already contentious relationship where she already doesn't like him, and you get the feeling that we should know why. And it takes a while to realize that the reason she doesn't like him is because he told a super lame joke when they were all at a party, and she got incredibly offended. And I'm going to tell you, when I read whatever the joke was, not worth getting offended over. It's like listening to somebody tell a dad joke and you being like, I'm never speaking to you again.
Yeah, that's a little much. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, it felt like high school. It was a lot of like overreacting and like not a lot of substance. So anyway, he's been crushing on her. She wants nothing to do with him. They both get invited to a weekend ball at the home of David, Duke of Kenilworth, because we are all having parties that last 3 days where we invite everybody over to our house to stay for the weekend and have many costume themes and breakfast, lunch, dinner, and hunting parties and catering and butlers. So they go to this long-ass weekend ball. Peaches sees this as her Cinderella opportunity. Stephen is only going because the ghosts make him. The ball is a disaster. Stephen has been dating these 3 other women. They all show up to the ball. The only thing we know about these women is they are from noble blood. They are gold diggers, and they like to drink expensive champagne. Okay, now let's see, guys.
Oh, it's time for your champagne. Your champagne.
I don't know if I can open it.
Oh, gosh.
You guys.
I believe in you, Meghan.
Oh, that was really disappointing. Guys, I was really hoping it would make like a popping sound, but this was a weird little twist off. All right, well, anyway, I'm going to drink my... I don't think it's going to make the sound. Nicole and I have decided that we don't have microphones that pick up any of the ASMR.
It makes me so sad because you had such good ice clinking last time.
I know, I did.
And I couldn't even use it because it didn't show up.
I'm hoping that because I tried to talk while that was happening, you'll hear the bubbles. Cheers, guys. I just have my champagne open. I'm going to take a sip. The only alcohol in this entire book was a lot of expensive champagne. And again, Peaches doesn't drink. And at some point in the book, Stephen says something like, well, I don't drink. And I'm like, oh, you two boring yahoos.
They deserve each other.
Yeah. So anyway, the girlfriends are all happy to be there drinking. Stephen is only casually dating them because his grandmother approves of their lineage, and it keeps his family off his back about trying to find a suitable mate, since he's going to hold all these titles and he needs to be the one that, carries the family line. So he's dating them just to be like, yeah, Grandma, see, I'm trying. So he doesn't even like any of these women. He spends all his time at the ball ignoring these girls who are drinking all the champagne and trying to protect Peaches from David's advances, the guy who's holding the ball, and trying to make her comfortable because David's sister Irene knows that David likes her, but also knows that Stephen likes her. She has a thing for Stephen, so she's just trying to make Peaches' life miserable this whole weekend. So Peaches thinks this is going to be a fun weekend, and it ends up just being awful. Eventually, Irene succeeds in making Peaches cry. Peaches runs off and is suddenly engulfed in a time gate. Doesn't seem to bother her. This seems to be like, oh no, where am I? Oh, I must have been in a time gate. What time am I in? I'll figure out how to get back. Whereas if I hit a time gate, I'd be like, WTF, man, and really scared. But this seems apparently normal. Stephen tries to come after her. He finds her, brings her back. She decides at this point she's going to give him a chance. I don't feel like there's any more that I'm going to give away from here on out. Okay. What I will say is the following, because I have thoughts. The villains in this book, again, were written, in my opinion, very like high school, meaning it was very Mean Girls in a way that you see the behavior and you're like, that is not how real people act. Real people are more subtle. I don't even know like how to explain it, but you've seen a movie. It was just over the top and shallow. There's a ton of focus in this book put on what society expects from these nobility and title holders, which felt real weird for a book that was supposed to be written in mostly the present. Yes, It was written in 2012. Decent enough that I feel like it's real weird that everybody's like, you can't associate with that person. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's how England really is. Let me know, guys. But it just felt out of touch and a little bit unrelatable. Pants. Nicole, have you ever heard the British phrase, that's pants?
No, and I lived in England.
That phrase was in the book 4 times, along with pantsitude, like P-A-N-T-S, pants. It apparently means rubbish. So there was a lot of people saying like, oh, that's totally pants, or the pantsitude of that person. Okay. Might have to incorporate that into my lingo. The action was avoided. And this, to me, is very opposite of your book. I actually wrote that while we were sitting here, like opposite of Bertrice Small, where she needs to explain over and over again how she got away from somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. My book would be like, there's this tremendously terrible thing happening. We need to figure out how to, make sure that the castle doesn't fall. And then the next chapter would be like, now that they figured out how to let the castle not fall, everybody was happy. And you're like, wait, but how did they figure it out? Like, you thought the big thing was coming. You were kind of excited for it. It's like, ooh, the anticipation. How are they going to figure this one out?
Yeah.
It's happened multiple times in the book where I'd be like, oh, here it comes. Here it comes. You get to the next chapter and it's like 4 days later, the castle hadn't fallen. Wait, what happened in the 4 days? And I think that has always held me back from writing a book myself, because I always felt like I need to have an explanation of why the castle didn't fall. Apparently you don't. Apparently you can just skim by all of it and be on book 13 and people are buying it up. And they're like, we don't care why the castle didn't fall. We're going to read all your books.
I think there's a happy medium. I know there's a happy medium, right? We want to know the details of things, but we don't need the details respun over and over and over again.
It was rough, because the things that I think would have interested me and kept me more engaged in the book were all the things she glossed over. Like multiple times where it felt like, oh, here's the conflict. How did they solve it? Like, this is going to be really interesting. And then just nothing happened.
Yeah.
It was very 1225 Christmas Tree Lane.
Oh, what was the spice level, Meghan?
Well, let me just say 1225 Christmas Tree Lane, but without the black wool pants. For anybody who's just tuning in now and doesn't know what we're talking about, Nicole read 1225 Christmas Tree Lane by Debbie Macumber. And that is where we decided that milk was going to be entering the spicy Scoville units, because there was just absolutely no spice. I do feel like this book hovers between milk and green pepper. First of all,
God.
Yeah. You win by default. There's no boobs in this book.
Shut the front door.
Yeah,
Not even a heaving chest?
Nothing. Nicole wrote to me earlier today to ask me if nipples counted as a mention of breasts. And I had to think about it for a minute. And I was like, yeah, I think that counts. I'm like, also, it's not going to matter.
I see that now.
It's not going to matter at all because this book is so tame. And I'm not going to put it at total milk because unlike 1225 Christmas Tree Lane, I do feel like there was at least some chemistry and you actually wanted the characters to get together. Whereas with that book, you kind of felt like, why? This makes no sense.
Yeah.
So with these two characters, I'm at least like, okay, it makes sense. So I'll give them that green pepper.
Was there hand-holding at least?
Yes, there was hand-holding. The first kiss happened on page 200 out of 300 pages.
Okay, at least a kiss. Was it a chaste kiss?
Nicole, may I tell you what I wrote down here?
Yes.
You were taking liberties, said Peaches. Stephen responds with, darling, you have no idea the liberties. Well, never mind. I wouldn't have taken liberties, even if I'd had you to myself. A chaste kiss, perhaps, at the appropriate moment.
A chaste kiss.
A chaste kiss, my dear. A chaste kiss. There's also an interaction between Tess and Peaches, the sisters, where Tess says, it's best to wait until marriage. Tess responds with, it is? I'm sorry, Peaches responds, it is, and Tess is like, it is. So we are talking about a very non-sexual book. They first have sex after they're married, and all you know is they got married and retired to the chambers. There's just like nothing. There's nothing. This is definitely a romance novel, but it's a romance novel lacking the spice. And again, to go back to the black wool pants that were worn
by my character.
Well, not worn because she wished she had
worn her black wool pants. Yes.
Yeah. This is again what's setting this a little bit apart is that clothing was actually a pretty big deal in this book. There was a lot of fashion. There were a lot of ball gowns. There were a lot of dressing beautifully. And so the fashion was at least appropriate for being cute and pretty, and unlike black wool pants. But much like your 1225 Christmas Tree Lane, there were so many characters from previous books that I couldn't keep them straight. And I thought they were just being dropped in the book.
Yeah.
So that people who'd read previous books would be like, oh my God, Zachary showed up. Not for any necessary reason. So I really felt like I got doggy dumped, which was what I was calling it, because isn't that how your book started, that one, where like dogs just got dumped on her porch?
Yes.
Yeah. So I kept thinking the whole time I was reading that, I'm like, I'm getting doggy dumped. Like,
because she also diverted repeatedly to characters that I had no concept or knowledge of, and then spent pages on them where I'm like, great, who the F is this person?
Yes. And I think if I had read the previous 12 books, maybe I would have found that more interesting because I also would have had time to understand and know those characters. But because I couldn't keep them all straight because they all had the same last names, it just was not interesting.
I'm also a firm believer in, though, and we've talked about this, Megan, that a book should be able to stand on its own 2 feet, even if it's part of a series and there are repeating characters. That's my personal opinion.
I don't necessarily agree. However, if you're not going to tell me it's part of a series, then it should be able to stand up on its own.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with this book, is nowhere in here does it say,
Book 13,
part 12 of the de Piaget family series or the follow-up to, and then tell me what the novel was before. Like, there was no clue on this book that I should have been reading previous things. And I think that's my biggest issue is I don't mind if I'm supposed to be building through. Like, you couldn't have picked up the, 8th book in the Harry Potter series without having read the previous ones. Like, it's never going to stand on its own, but you knew it was book 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's my biggest issue.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably covering all of my stuff here. I've got a milky green pepper. I've got a booby prize fail. I was doggy dumped.
My boobies hit for this book on page 35.
Nice.
And this was actually not the nipple one I was talking about. That was another book because I was like, does that count? This one is "You'll wed me before the solstice, my hinny, and by this time next year you'll hae my son sucking at your tit."
Ooh, that is not a sexy reference. That's got to be the baldier.
That was Balger.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, you got Balger.
Yeah. You got a romantic reminder? Because I'm thinking for your book, the romantic reminder should be, hey, don't forget your wife. Maybe you got a better one.
Actually, he was not able to come up with a romantic reminder for this, really, truly, sincerely. And Megan, I sat hard there today when I was typing up all my notes. I'm like, I got nothing. So you know what? I'm going to claim that one. We're going to say the romantic reminder, and I'm typing it in now, is to remember your damn wife.
Remember she exists.
Yes. Remember your wife exists.
Well, I'm going to say for mine, it's show you care by planning ahead. So the very first time that Peaches stayed over at Stephen's place, and she didn't even stay for romantic reasons, like just happened to be there, stayed over on the couch, whatever. He already knew he was trying to woo her. And like I mentioned earlier, she was a vegetarian. She's very specific with her diet needs. He had gone out and bought a juicer and a bunch of fruit in anticipation of hopefully having her come stay at some point in time. So the next morning for breakfast, he was able to make her fresh juice, and he made her like, I don't know, an English muffin with avocado or something. But he had pre-planned the fact that he really wanted to try and, you know, show her that he cared. So I liked that, the fact that he was planning ahead.
I like that as well.
And I will say the writing in these books was fine. The concept was really fun. Time travel and having ghosts like interfere with your love life. Like that was all a fun concept. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more if I had started from scratch. But instead I was just kind of irritated and a little bit put out. But it was a very sweet romance for anybody who's not looking for spicy. You know, there's decent storytelling, and maybe if you start at book 1, you would really enjoy this series.
Yeah. I think if you like erotic stuff and you're not going to be triggered like I was, Bertrice Small is probably your jam because she ain't afraid to put it all out there.
Dude, I've got a couple in the queue. I don't remember what years they were published. One of them I think is called Deceived, which I think is an earlier novel. That might be 80s or 90s. And then the other one, I don't remember the name of that one, but it takes place in like a fantasy land that is kind of reminiscent of like a Scotland, Ireland area.
Okay. That
one I have a little bit more hope for not being as triggering.
Okay.
But we'll see. So I may still read one of them just to see where we're going.
So, Megan, what do you have up next on the podcast? For April, we're starting off with a Fools in Love type of theme for April Fools.
April Fools, whatever that might mean to us. So I actually chose based on the title of my book. I don't know if it's going to be so much Fools in Love, but this is our first gay romance.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Covered. Yeah, my book is called Tricks of the Trade, and I felt like, you know, April Fools, you're usually tricking people.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. The little tagline on the front here of my book, Tricks of the Trade by Ben Tyler, is, in gay Hollywood, it's not who you know, it's who you do. So being gay in Hollywood is never easy. But thanks to his homophobic female boss, Bart Kane's life is a living hell. The disgruntled staff writer would like nothing better than to retire to a picturesque Scottish village, preferably with a hot literary career and a hotter houseboy at his beck and call. But first, he has an axe to grind with Sherry Draper, Sterling Studios, and the industry in general. If Bart's going down, and not in the way he usually prefers, then he's hell-bent on taking the whole damn town with him. I'll just leave it there.
But I want a houseboy.
Right? In Scotland? That was not the place I would have thought if you're going to have a cabana boy, Sounds like a warm place.
I like
Whatever.
it. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Should be good. What do you got?
I have Lord Rupert's Foolish Bride.
Ooh.
To get the land he needs, Lord Rupert Varian must marry Farmer Tolliver's witless daughter. Gossip says Jenny has been raised in a barn, denied an education, and used as a servant. Even if she could act like a lady, he would never wed a foolish bride. Rupert has no intention of putting his head in the parson's noose to marry the wild young woman until he meets her. The lovely Jenny Tolliver waits for Rupert on the path to her home. She mocks him delightfully, refuses to marry him, quotes Shakespeare, and tells him kindly that no one wants to marry the poor youngest son of a wicked noble family. He insists his mother is not wicked, though cannot deny the rest. Jenny acts the fool in front of her father. Rupert is convinced she is afraid of the brute. If she is somewhat uncivilized, surely being raised in a barn by a donkey could do that to anyone. Meeting Jenny has thrown him into a storm of passion and laughter, laced with pity for her life with Tolliver. Rupert wants the land and Jenny, but can she be taught to be a lady, or will she forever be his foolish bride?
So we got tricks and fools.
Tricks and fools.
I have a feeling that the one I've got right now is going to be way more than milky green pepper.
God, I hope so. So we've still got Romance Con, coming up in Milwaukee.
Yes.
We have the Bookish Biddy brunch in the works, and it's all in September.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got that coming up. And I was telling you that I discovered a new secondhand bookstore.
Yes.
Second and Charles.
Like an hour
Yeah,
away
it's
from
about
your
an
house?
hour away in Fayetteville. So Second and Charles, and it was huge, Meghan. It was overwhelming. And I was able to score a book that is actually written by one of the authors who will be at Romance Con. So that's exciting.
I love that.
Yay.
Who is the author? Do you have it right there that you could tell me?
I do.
Ooh.
This is called Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. And that one is going to be at Romance Con.
That's exciting. I think this is going to be so much fun. So Nicole and I have talked about doing this Biddy brunch. I want to put all the details out there so people can start kind of thinking about it.
The
7th.
brunch will be the 7th, yeah.
Brunch on the 7th of September in the Milwaukee area. We haven't quite picked a place yet, so it might be in like the burbs somewhere. We're trying to find a place with easy parking that would also be tasty and have a lot of space for us. So
and
Nicole's
ideally bottomless mimosas.
Yeah. Nicole's doing some work on that so we can have like some mimosas and maybe Bloody Marys and just hang out and talk. I think it'd be really, really fun to see you guys. So we're going to start getting that kind of pegged and ready to go. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really good weekend. I still haven't ordered more books. I've got one that is for an upcoming author at the Romance Con, but I've got that cart full. And so maybe between now and our next podcast, I will get those ordered. For those of you who haven't checked it out yet, Ripped Bodice, go to them online. You can find brand new romance novels there. That is what they specialize in. And like I said, I've got a cart full that I need to get ordered. Some of them, though, are ones that haven't been released yet, which is kind of why I've been holding out. I'm trying to see how many I can get at one time. So I
have a list of like 12 in my own cart as well.
Yes.
And I'm super excited to place my order eventually. But if you do order from the Ripped Bodice, we do encourage you to use our affiliate link, which we'll include in the show notes for the podcast, and which you can also find on our website, because not only will you be supporting their business, but we get a little affiliate kickback as well that helps us continue doing the podcast.
Exactly, which is super fun.
Yeah. You can also support our podcast by doing the Buy Me a Coffee, which you're really just buying us a book.
Uh-huh.
And that is buymeacoffee.com/romanceontherocks. So super easy to do. You can buy us a book, 3 books, 5 books, whatever floats your boat.
The books, the stack of books.
All the books.
My house is so full of stacks of books right now, you guys.
My tote is now overflowing, but you and I discussed recently on one of our podcasts that we were culling the herd, and I've pulled a bunch of Janet Daly out.
Yeah. I feel like you've done what you could.
I gave her a fair shot. I'm still willing to read some key states, but otherwise I probably pulled like a dozen out of there. Do have to give a shout out to one of my salon clients, Jennifer, who gave me a really beautiful handmade bookmark recently for keeping tabs of my smut.
That is really sweet.
Yeah, it's got like an adorable little like hydrangea purple flower on it, and it's like metal, and it's like a charm. It's really cute.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. She fully supports the smut reading.
Very good.
Well, I think that's it for today.
All right, man. Well, thank you guys for joining us for Romance on the Rocks. Please like, subscribe, and follow. And if you are a hopelessly romantic, bookish biddy like us, think about giving us a review on Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you catch your podcasts. Your support really means the world to us. And until next time, stay safe and know that you are loved.